named Damani. He's at Columbia, and he recently got out of SEG for emailing WRT, just letting us know some of the things that are going on. So he's out now, but see, he's got some medical issues, problems with his eyes, and he's trying to figure out what's going on, but they're not giving him what he needs, adequate medical care. So from everything he's describing, he's in danger of losing his eyesight. And when he came out of SEG, they put him in a cell that has no heat. So he's been complaining and talking to the guards and trying to get some help to get some heat. And that's been like weeks and weeks. Not just his cell, but like there's a whole block of cells that has no heat, and it's the winter time.
Mm-hmm.
So
and this happens every year. This happens every year. It gets super hot in the cells, like close to 100
no air
degrees,
conditioning, yeah.
or it gets super cold in the cells if it's a cold winter, and they have to endure it. And if they go into SEG, sometimes they put them in there with nothing on. So just their shorts.
So I've been calling Columbia, trying to get a social worker and people like that, but I never get any phone calls back. So I don't know what you guys' experience has been, trying to get him some help with the heat and medical care. So
yeah, we actually had...
Is this Damani?
This is Damani.
He almost lost his leg. Yeah, they stopped giving cleaning supplies, but they also didn't have his clothes. They took his clothes from him.
So this is really similar to what's going on at the border.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the way we have to speak about it, that there's this international criminal abuse, and similarly in our state.
Mm-hmm.
You know what bothers me, though, is that it's been going on for so long, and we just haven't known it because they haven't been transparent.
Mm-hmm.
No one's been transparent. And now that this is some kind of transparency, only because there's technology now. Now that the guys have technology, they can actually get out and say something, or they can write, and no one's stopping it because it's too much.
Yes, they are starting to stop it.
Oh well, they're stopping it with but no one has stopped the information
to the institution
that we got.
message.
Right.
Yeah.
He started to get a threat to the institution.
No, we
Me
get
too.
those when they email us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Starting to.
What that contains?
So it's like, for example, Nate Lindell wrote to me about how the policies for the lockdown don't apply to this situation. So it's just legal information. And they said that letting him send that email out would be a threat to the institution, so they blocked the email.
So how did you get it?
He then he transcribed it on paper and sent it to me, so I got it a week later through the regular mail. And
so mail is not yet.
yeah, they have a harder time opening and restricting mail than email. Does anybody else? Oh, go ahead.
Well, we're finding out that some of that's not true.
What?
The threat to the institution.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course.
It's completely, it's completely arbitrary. The things that we actually finally get, and we have had situations where we complain about it and then it gets to here and they say, yeah, that's not a threat to the institution, should be released. And it's clearly there's not a threat to the institution, but it's only a week later, once we received the snail mail, that we were able to, even raise the issue to a level that people here would pay attention.
I was going to say, showers, and that not a hot meal, but sometimes it's a bag lunch with not too much.
Right. Yeah, that was for, I think, going on 3 weeks right after, from November 8th to like mid-December. That was what the situation was.
Yeah, under the lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they go under lockdown. I personally experienced how that goes when I was in there, and the gentleman was killed by another inmate. It first of all stunned me that they would put a deaf and a person who cannot hear or speak in a cell with someone that they know to be dangerous and a threat. And then when the gentleman was killed, and after being killed, the inmates was punished. We was locked in our cells. We couldn't move. we wasn't giving hot meals, we were giving bad lunches because of the decision that they made. You know, they made that decision, and then we was locked down to a point that we couldn't communicate, because at that time they didn't have the emails and stuff yet. So we couldn't communicate exactly what was going on to the media and stuff like that. And so this is not a new problem, you know, in this state. It's just one now that technology is allowing us to reach out, you know, more, longer reach, you know, and to the families of people behind there. But it's a problem that have to be dealt with, and we're relying on the new governor and the new DOC secretary to address these matters, because it don't make sense to put a new person in a position and keep the old people's around, you know, that's under the, you know, that was under that old way. You know, if you're gonna allow them to stay in their position, ain't no sense in putting a new person in charge of them, because you're gonna have the same problem just under different leadership. You know, so these are things that we want the, you know, the citizens of this state to understand. These are lives. These are human beings. You know, the judge have not sentenced no one to death in this state, but people are dying simply because they're being incarcerated in a place where people don't care about their well-being. And that's where the problem lies in the state of Wisconsin. And unless the people who actually care get up and speak out, it's going to continue, because our silence only feeds the problem.
Does anybody else want to speak out, add to stories and things that we've heard and understand from what is going on in Columbia?
Well, I was there on November 8th visiting my son, who has a 36.5-year sentence. He was sentenced at 17 years old just a year ago. And so I was visiting him, and at the time I was at the vending machine, and I heard a lot of commotion and banging on the window, and I looked back and I saw my son's face in the glass begging to get out of the room where one of the guards was actually being brutally attacked.
Wow.
I heard that he was actually stabbed, and that he is actually not returning back to the facility because of his injuries. And I heard just through the grapevine, I get worried about retaliation with my son, things like that, but that this guard was known for harassing the guys inside, calling them derogatory racist names. And so this guy who allegedly did this, I guess, was tired of it, and reacted out. And it was definitely to see, as a mother, sorry I get emotional, to see something like that, to see your kid and to have to leave him. So we were escorted out. One of the high administrators came down. It was all closed off, curtains up, and we were escorted out within, I think it was a half hour, 15 to half hour. And we walked out, and I felt like I was leaving my son in a jungle with lions, and I had to walk away. And so it was rough, and it has created a lot of issues for me now. That's triggered my what you call like a post-traumatic stress from everything going through all this. So yeah, it was horrifying, beyond words to say, to watch that happen and to see it unfold right in front of you as I'm going to visit my son. Yeah.
So we heard a lot of the same things, that guard was injured pretty badly, and he's not going to be coming back. But we have heard that the stabbing was not true. That was one of the things that got exaggerated. From a couple different people said that there was no weapons involved in any of these assaults. But we're never going to see the actual investigation because there's no transparency around it.
Right.
So
my son, go ahead.
Oh, no.
He also just had, I was telling Sylvester on the way up here regarding my son, I went on a vacation and a getaway, and I came back to visit, and his face was swollen, and I asked asked him what was going on, and he said he has a sinus infection, what he believed to be a sinus infection, and that he had written the medical staff numerous times, and it was going on approximately, I believe, 2 weeks. And his face was swollen, red, hot to touch, and he said that he had complained numerous times to the guards that he was painful. It had actually traveled into his jawline and into his ears. And I said, well, why haven't they seen you? And he said there's limited movement within the prison system right now. And I said, so I asked him I said, first go talk to the guards again tonight. If you don't hear anything, let me know, and I'll call the next day. So he went to ask the guards for actually more tissue because his nose kept running, and he was blowing his nose with his t-shirt, and they wouldn't give him any more toilet paper. They were kind of like saying they were rationing it at the time. So he was blowing his nose with the sinus infection with the t-shirt. And so I called the next day to the medical staff and left voice messages and expressed my deep concerns, requesting, because I am a nurse, so I wanted to know their protocol on this. And within, I think it was an hour or two, they went to see my son. He was then prescribed all his medicines, and Medipods, sprays, things like that. And so it was, but my concern too was, what about the people who don't have an advocate on the outside?
Right.
And so it took for my son to wait almost 2 weeks with a sinus infection, which can be deadly, I mean, if it gets to the brain and if it's not treated, and for them to actually treat him with just a minor. So imagine if you had a major, like something like, and they're overlooking something like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what happened to Larry Bracey. That's why Larry Bracey is not with us anymore, is because he had a major issue during this lockdown, and the warden's policy of not treating anybody because of limited movement. Warden Novak is also withholding flu vaccines. Medical staff have said that the vaccines arrived near the beginning of the flu season, and a diabetic prisoner told us, William Ledford, he's got diabetes, so his immune system is compromised. If he doesn't get a flu vaccine, especially in a facility that's overcrowded, 150%, that's
putting him at serious risk.
Right. That's a lot of people who are at serious risk, and
death trap.
And there's no reason, like the warden gives no reason or justification for denying those flu vaccines. Finally, Bill and one other person who were complaining a lot got it, but they haven't heard that anybody else got it, so they haven't been offered to the general population.
And you said that that knife attack was not real.
It was a real assault, but there was not a knife.
Imani wrote in and gave him 5 pages of detail.
But who else knows that but us?
Right.
You know, so you got people out there who already assume the worst anyway, and they still don't get any information, and they're going to continue, and we won't get a bigger crowd. We won't get more people involved because they're not getting that information.
We're trying our best. You know, FFUP has put up many posts on this situation as we get information. We've done open records requests. We got shift logs, which we're going through now to see exactly what was going on, who was moved to the hole at what time, when the lockdowns happened, and like we got shift logs starting a few days before the first of these incidents, and at that point there were like 5 or 6 people on observation status, which is suicide watch, and like just the regular everyday conditions, especially at Columbia Correctional, have been really atrocious, ongoing, and so this is a death trap that is ready to set off and has been triggered.
Local news. See, the local news, when they get that kind of news, it spreads like wildfire.
Right.
You know, it was all over, you know, Madison. But when they don't get what they want, or when the private prison system is in charge, it's just us. You know, it's squashed back down to us. So that information isn't out. The positive part of what people are doing, some of the horrors that are happening in the prison, that's squashed.
Completely.
Not only does the private prison do that, Wisconsin does that too. And it should be transparent. If something happened of this nature, and there's a death threat or there's an epidemic or something, we should know it. The parents and relatives should be notified immediately that there's a problem, whether it's a sickness, understand, but they don't do that because they consider it as a safety issue. When it's not a safety issue, it's a life, death situation.
Or a threat to the
Community.
a threat to the prison. A threat to the prison.
Well, we have to
They might as well write
understand.
that down too. and
We
send it
have to
us.
understand as citizens, this building and everybody working in here are paid by taxpayers' dollars. So they should have a open transparency rule, because I mean, what are you trying to hide? You know, if you're in here doing your job and you're being held accountable like you holding the people that under your detention accountable, we wouldn't have these problems. You know, this is not something that just started. You know, I recall when I was in Colombia, they took me out to the hospital one day, and even after I asked them did they have my insulin, and the guard told me yes, we went to the hospital and they didn't have my insulin. And they deliberately held me at that hospital without my insulin for 8 hours just to save gas from sending one of them back to get my insulin and coming back to the hospital with it. So what did the guards do? They lied all that time saying that a nurse is on the way first, a nurse gonna come down, which I knew better. Ain't no nurse in no hospital gonna give you insulin, because they're liable if they haven't, you know, you've been diagnosed by one of their doctors, and then they went to somebody gonna bring it. But they kept that loud for 8 hours, putting my life at risk, simply because didn't nobody want to go and get the insulin and bring it back. So this is not a new thing, and we shouldn't feel bad about asking them to be held accountable.
That's right.
You know, I was held accountable for my crime. That's why I was incarcerated. Okay, I don't knock that. That was something that I earned. So when they're in there doing things that is illegal and bogus against our rights, they should be held accountable. Not covered up, not sit up and dug and lied, you know. And I noticed, like, in the system, when one guard get too bad at one place, just shift them to another place. One warden get too bad or get too many reports, they shift them to another place. That's not fixing the problem. You just exposing a whole new group of people to the same problem. And so it's just time for the people to paying these taxes to start speaking out. You know, when it's enough, it's enough. You know, DOC is a powerful organization. They control a lot of lives. And it's not right that they have the will of life and death over individual in their custody. But that's what's going on. They wield it, and they don't have no problem of letting people die if it ain't in their best interest. I was told that I could not have a CPAP machine in a state facility. I'm in a state facility, a prison facility, with a diagnosed sleep apnea that DOC diagnosed me with, but they told me they can't give me a CPAP machine. And they meant it, because they held me in their facility and never gave me one. Otherwise, I could have died, and they'd have came up with a script on why I died, other than it's because they didn't give me a CPAP machine.
Because
And
of the price of it.
that's what's scary, because there are thousands of people who have died, and no one's known why.
Yeah.
And it's gone by. It's been decade after decade after decade of people who have died, and they just covered it up. And we're just getting to it. But I know, you know, you can feel it in your bones that all these people have died, and there's no one to say anything.
Yeah, we really need to start holding the media accountable also, because the media, in a lot of instances, feed this injustice by publicizing one side of thing and, you know, downsizing the others. You know, like for the knife thing, it was boom. Then there were 9 stabbing guards. But when it came out, it wasn't the case. I never heard it yet. This is the first time I heard of that. And that should have been immediately sent out to let people know that that never happened.
A correction, a media correction, like they used to do. They don't do that anymore.
Right, they made this guy look like he was just a monster.
That should never be out, that they deserve to be back there. So, yeah, you know, it's just time out to stop talking and stop doing, you know. I mean, you know, this country ain't come where it's at simply because it decided to do the right thing. It come to where it's at because people wouldn't sacrifice what it took to make the change possible. And it's no different in this situation. You know, it's going to have to be sacrifices in order to get the changes that we're fighting for.
That's right.
You know, those sacrifices, you know, have to be made because, I mean, these people's lives mean something. You know, I have a brother that's locked up for life. His life means something other. I don't care what he did. He paying that crime. His incarceration is what the judge punished him with. He sentenced him for the crime that he committed. Does not give a state the right to sit there and punish him and violate his constitutional rights. You know, give him inhumane treatment, treat him with cruel and unusual punishment, and then justify it in a lie. You know, it's not meant for that. So it's just time for change.
But after they have it twisted, when you're sent to prison, you're sent to prison as punishment, not to be punished.
Right.
You know, punishment is taking you away from your family, loved one, things, your daily habits. You know what I mean? It's not to punish you while you're there. But some of them got the script twisted. And they go in there, big-eyed little you, and they have a plan to do you in because you're there. That's not right. And we have to change that. I've been there. I know what it's about. And my point of view is to support people who have issues that we can address to our legislature, state, the Department of Correction, because they need to be held accountable for it. I've served 20 years there, and I know what they're doing. I know the incentive that they see as an incentive to them, you know, to keep it quiet. You know, these actions should be transparent. We have a right to know about these things. We have a right to have fair and just people, right-minded people working there. The rule is do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. Because 95% of the people are getting out. Good 90% of the people are getting out. We don't want angry people in our community being released because they've been mistreated by the Department of Correction. We don't want to label the Department of Correction as enemies, but they have a job to do and they should do their job right. They should be fair in their job because this is a job. They're a public servant and we're going to hold them accountable for it. We're here today and we're going to be here again if this matter isn't taken under serious consideration.
What is the warden's response to, you know, what we've been talking about, and who's over her, and you know, how do we get the message out besides what you're trying to do?
Has anybody heard back from the warden?
No.
So the warden's boss is Magda Fesahaya. She's the head of the Division of Adult Institutions. And I have met with her a couple of times. She came to an event in Milwaukee in early November, so I was able to talk to her about this when it happened. And she gives a lot of talk but no action. She says, you know, that these were serious incidents and they're trying to deal with it. But she used to be a lawyer, so she's really good at like getting around and directly answering questions. Secretary Carr hasn't been responsive to anything about this. So yeah, there's just a complete lack of transparency. And so we just hear horror stories from inside. We don't hear anything to, you know, settle our minds about what's actually happening or hear anything to show that there's going to be solutions or progress or any change.
Can we go higher than Secretary Carr?
Governor.
Governor, yeah.
The governor, yeah. And we can say something. We have interviews coming up with you, and hopefully we can say something on the radio that addresses the governor.
Mm-hmm. I would love to talk about the governor on your radio show.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can feel free to.
Wrote a letter and just got a sort of form letter back from the governor saying that, you know, there's so much going on and they'll reply to my letter when they have time or whatever. So this is kind of pretty lame.
Like anybody has time, you know? With all these people that are punishing people inside the system, nobody has that kind of time.
No.
But they had time to go and play basketball during this whole thing at another prison. So it's like photo op, good guys, and yet all this stuff is happening at CCI. It's deplorable.
Okay, so let's go to that step, that accountability step. Let's go in and see if Secretary Carr will come down and talk with us. And if not him, then somebody else.
Here?
We're hoping.